To check in with our good friend Chase Goodbread of NFL.com. Also, you see him on Friday nights on Crimson Covered Television right here in the Tuscaloosa area and beyond. WVUA Channel 23, Crimson Covered Television. Chase Goodbread, John Copeland, Mike Parker. You catch him there Friday evenings as well. Now, Chase is fresh from Senior Bowl week down in Mobile, Alabama, but I believe he's already jumped a plane out to the state of Texas. Where are you exactly right now, Goodbread, as we speak?
I'm in Houston, enjoying some temps here in the 60s and no sign of that Alabama snow. So I'm kind of glad to be away from Snowmageddon.
Yeah, you might miss this one. Now, you were here in 1993, right? March 1993, when we had that incredible
blizzard.
Snowstorm. Yeah.
Yes.
Give us your recollections of 1993.
I could burn the rest of your show with my story on that. I was actually at the time, I was traveling back from a job interview with a tiny newspaper in Bruton, Alabama, trying to get back to Tuscaloosa, and the snow, I mean, it all dropped right on my head on the interstate so fast that I couldn't even get back to Tuscaloosa. Could not even. I mean, there was snow on the exit signs and on the interstate signs, so you really couldn't even tell where you were. A couple of times I had to pull off on the side of the road and literally jump up and try to whack the snow off of some of the exit signs so I could know where I was, because there was no GPS then.
Oof.
So there you go.
Oof.
Yeah.
I'll tell you where I was on that day. Go ahead, though, if you got something else to add to that. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that was the size of it. I ended up staying in the lobby of a Comfort Inn that was sold out. They mercifully let me sleep in the lobby. And I fell asleep at about 11 probably is when I pulled in there. And I woke up to go to the bathroom at about 5, and the room was dark. And I went stumbling toward the bathroom, and I started stepping on like feet and elbows and knees, and I flipped the light on, and they had let 50 people in there like they'd done with me.
Hey, you thought you were back at the frat house, and it was early on a Sunday morning, right?
Yeah.
You went stumbling through the haze, Cooley?
Rest of the folks in that lobby weren't real pleased with me, but I didn't even know they were in there. I was the first one in.
Awesome. Yeah, I was a trusty employee at the home package store over in Northport, Goodbread.
Trusty, yeah.
Trusty. And they start sending out the warnings, and I got to get back across one of these bridges to over there, 13th Street, basically, the humble abode over there that about 6 of us were living in at the time. And so I call the owner of the store and I say, look, there's this big storm coming. They're saying that you need to get back across the bridges before like 6 o'clock that evening. And I was told, those forecasts never come true. Just stay until closing, I was told.
Yeah.
And once I hung up the phone, I turned that sign around to closed and locked her up, and across the bridge I went. And look, with the benefit of experience now, maybe I should have just stayed at the home package store. Goodbread, I had all the snacks and fluids, drinks I could have wanted right there. I'd have been okay, right?
There's worse places to get snowed in than a package store.
I'll tell you this, in my little bit of time working at that establishment, we never did as much sales as we did in the 2 hours before I hung that sign to closed. I mean, the place was from the register to the back to the coolers. There was a line of people getting necessities. They weren't buying, hey, Goodbread, they weren't buying bread and milk, put it that way.
No Sterno?
No batteries, no 9 volts. So there you go. Now, you're fresh from Mobile. Was Hunter Renfrow just that good all week, the Clemson receiver, Goodbread, or what? Because my timeline was a lot of Hunter Renfrow last week down in Mobile.
Yeah, he made a play or two. He didn't stand out to me as much as a couple of the other receivers, but he did all right. He made a really nice catch in the fourth quarter of the game on Saturday as the South team marched for a touchdown at near the end of the game that closed the gap a little bit. But I thought Andy Isabella probably looked a little bit better than Renfrow. He's certainly faster. He's the kid from UMass who has got a lot of people excited. Renfrow was all right though. He went down there and did his thing, got open, and you know, he's got great hands for sure. But you know, the measurables on him, that's going to be interesting when it all gets to the combine in Indianapolis in February.
Yeah, people watch the production and watch this guy make the big plays he made during his Clemson career, and they wonder, how was this guy a walk-on? But then at that weigh-in and those measurables that you pointed out, the size, the hand size, all those things kind of provided some spotlight on that.
He was the smallest guy at the Senior Bowl in like 3 or 4 of those measurable categories, including the kickers. Measured up, I think, at 5'10", 175. 5'10" wasn't the shortest guy there, but 175, he was the lightest. His arms measured 29 inches, shortest arms there. His hands were 7 3/4, smallest hands there. So, yeah, it's all about the tape for Renfro.
In terms of the quarterbacks, we know Dwayne Haskins wasn't there, and he kind of projects as the #1 guy out of Ohio State right now as an underclassman. So who was the best quarterback down in Mobile? Was it Jarrett Stidham? And if it wasn't, how did Stidham stack up with the rest of the guys there?
I thought Locke played the best throughout the week. He played pretty well in the game too, but from just in terms of consistency, Monday all the way through, I think you got to give it to Locke. And one caveat there is that the Wednesday practice went unwitnessed because there was such horrible weather down there. They actually had to move it to the South Alabama practice bubble, which was so small they had to close it to media. So I missed the Wednesday practices altogether. But that being said, between what I saw with my own eyeballs and the scouts that I talked to, Locke had a heck of a week. Daniel Jones is a guy they like a lot in terms of physical traits. The kid from Duke, he's got a chance to be a first-round pick. Not as consistent as some of the others during the practice week, but the physical traits on him, they definitely like a lot. And of course, they like that he comes from that David Cutcliffe cloth.
That doesn't hurt for sure. David Cutcliffe with an outstanding track record of developing quarterbacks going way back, as a matter of fact. Now, knowing where our Jags pick, Goodbread, towards what, 7, 8, I guess, in the top 10.
Another top 10er.
Yeah, if Haskins is gone before the Jags pick, did you see a quarterback down there that you think a team like the Jaguars in the bottom half of that top 10 should make a play for?
No, not in the bottom half of the top 10. I think if you're the Jags and you got to have a quarterback, it's either Haskins or you move down and take maybe one of the guys that were there at the Senior Bowl in the 20s or something. But of course, as we get closer, when it gets into March, you'll see a couple of quarterbacks who are going to move up the board. It's inevitable, and be talked about maybe in that top 10 range along with Haskins, or at least top 15. And I think that tends to result from the need at the position. Teams draft for need at quarterback more than any other spot. Obviously, you got to have one, or you're not in the game. And so they talk a lot about how they're always wanting to take the best player available, and that might be true if you're talking about linemen and pretty much any other position. But at the quarterback position, the GM feels like he's got to have one. Coach feels like he's got to have one. There's pressure on to win. Job may be on the line. They pull the trigger early on those guys.
They absolutely do. Now, Isaiah Buggs, the Alabama defensive end down there, along with Ross Pierschbacher, the center guard type from Alabama. Talk about the weeks that they had. It sounds like, from Buggs' perspective, it was that sort of consistent, steady outing throughout the week that Alabama fans saw from him over the last 2 years. And maybe Pierschbacher, the feedback on him, center guard, swing guy, those two guys from Alabama.
Bigger week for Buggs than Pierschbacher, I think, because Pierschbacher's a guy, and certainly Pierschbacher got a chance to show that he can slide between guard and tackle, but there's so much tape on Pierschbacher. He's a what you see is what you get player, I think, from a scouting standpoint. Buggs was a little bit of a different story because he played defensive tackle all week in a 4-man front. The NFL sees him as a tackle, not an end. And they wanted to know how he could handle, double teams inside and what kind of gap control he could show in the interior. And I thought he did well. If you watch the game, especially on Saturday, the North OL that he went against on Saturday had some monsters on it, some really, really good players in that group. And especially early in the game, I thought he did a lot to kind of be disruptive in there and kind of contain the run. I know he had a big year for Alabama as a pass rusher, but the NFL's looking at him as a guy as an early down player and pass rush. If he's able to bring it on Sundays, that'll be more bonus than expected, I think.
Couple of front seven guys from the Auburn contingent. Deshaun Davis, we talk about measurables and how important those are. That's where he's got a little bit of a question mark that he has to deal with at 5'11" or so. Dontavius Russell, the defensive tackle. You've talked about it in the past. It is a defensive line heavy draft. So in terms of value, a guy like Russell, similar to Buggs, what kind of value might a team get with him?
I think Russell's a guy who again, is going to be a lot like Buggs in terms of the box they'll put him in for the draft. A tackle who can contribute a lot, maybe on early downs, but in this draft, like you said, with all the DLs coming out, if that's how you're looked upon, then you could be tumbling a while, and the call could take a long time. Davis, on the other hand, the linebacker, I thought he had a really, really good week. Liked the way he played all year for Auburn. Passionate guy. Game means a lot to him for sure. He's 5'11", so that'll be a mark against him certainly. But you just watch that guy play and the way he finds the football. I think he'd make any club in the league, I think.
Yeah, he's a guy that I would like to see with our Jags. Our Jags, Goodbread, needs some juice in that front seven, and maybe a pro comp for Deshaun Davis. You think Sean Deion Hamilton, sort of similar, right, in terms of measurables coming out of Alabama last year, and actually had more of an injury issue than, I guess, Deshaun Davis.
Yeah, I think a Hamilton comp is pretty close to the mark there with Davis. I think Davis is, they can both range a little bit outside the tackle box, which you want. They can both bring it between the tackles. So, you're probably on there with that. It'll be interesting to see where Davis ends up draft-wise. I think the combine will certainly be big for him. But overall, a really good week for him. I thought a better week for him than Russell.
There you go. Chase Goodbread of NFL.com. And also Crimson Cover Television, the Talkin Tide podcast with yours truly. It is a Monday edition of Southern Fried Sports on Tide 102.9 and 100.9 FM, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz of Tuscaloosa and also Carty and Lloyd Attorneys at Law. Hey, Chase, don't stay off that mechanical bull at Gillies while you're out there in Houston, okay? But I would go to Ninfa's. Go to the original Ninfa's and get the fajitas if you haven't done that already. I'm just telling you. They're out of this world, Goodbread. You got to make that.
I can hit that before I go, and I'm sure I'll get one of those Texas steaks or some Texas brisket before I go. I'm here till Thursday morning, so I'll hit that expense account. All right, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. I think Rodgers going to be okay. Even with the blowback from the Saints Rams debacle, I think Roger Goodell he's going to get by, I think, with the start of Super Bowl week. Rodgers about to get maybe some hard questions here in the next day or so over there in Atlanta. Hey, Chase, safe travels, my friend. We'll talk to you again real soon.
All right, Travis.